In the frozen heart of Montana's Bitterroot Mountains, Silas, a retired Army veteran, faced a choice that defied nature. A dying bobcat cub appeared on his porch, but the shadows behind it held a danger he never saw coming. The winter of 2024 didn't just arrive in Montana, it attacked. The wind screamed through the pine trees like a freight train, and the temperature had plummeted to a bone-chilling 30 below. Inside his modest log cabin, Silas was stoking the fire. At 65, his joints ached from years of service in the 101st Airborne, and he preferred the company of his old hound dog, Buster, over most people. The mountains were his sanctuary, a place where the ghosts of his past couldn't find him. But that night, something did find him. It started with a sound, not the wind, and not the heavy thud of snow falling from the roof. It was a frantic, desperate scratching at the heavy oak door. Silas gripped his old service rifle. In these woods, you didn't open the door for just anyone, especially not during a blizzard. He peered through the small window, his breath fogging the glass. He expected a lost hiker or maybe a stray dog. Instead, his heart skipped a beat. Standing on his porch, illuminated by the dim yellow porch light, was a bobcat. She was a ghost of the forest, a predator that usually vanished before a human could even blink. But she wasn't vanishing tonight. She was standing her ground, her thick fur matted with ice and frozen blood. And in her jaws, she held a tiny, limp bundle of fur. Silas slowly unlatched the door. The cold air rushed in like a slap to the face. The bobcat didn't flinch. She looked up at him with amber eyes that held a terrifying, human-like plea. She wasn't there to hunt. She was there because she had nowhere else to go. "Easy, girl," Silas whispered, his voice trembling. He saw the blood on the floorboards. It was coming from her front paw, which was mangled and raw. She stepped forward, placing the tiny cub at his feet. The baby was barely moving. It was a gift of trust that no man should ever receive from the wild. Silas stepped back, opening the door wide. To his absolute shock, the wildcat limped inside, carrying her baby, and headed straight for the warmth of the hearth. "Stay with me," because Silas was about to realize that this mother cat wasn't just running from the cold, she was being hunted. The mother bobcat collapsed onto Silas's worn rug, still guarding her cub. Silas closed the door and bolted it, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was a man who had seen combat in distant lands, but he had never felt a tension quite like this. The air in the cabin felt thick, heavy with the scent of wet fur and iron-rich blood. Suddenly, Buster, his old dog, began to growl, a deep, guttural sound Silas hadn't heard in years. Buster wasn't looking at the bobcats. He was looking at the front door. Then came the sound, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to shake the very foundations of the cabin. It wasn't a bobcat. It was much, much larger. Silas felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. A mountain lion. The great predator of the West had followed the blood trail. It slammed its massive body against the door. The heavy oak groaned. The mother bobcat tried to stand, her mangled paw giving way beneath her. She let out a hiss that sounded like steam escaping a pipe, her eyes fixed on the door. Silas knew the mountain lion wouldn't stop. It could smell the weakness. It could smell the meal. Silas grabbed his heavy shotgun from the rack. He didn't want to kill, but he wouldn't let a guest be slaughtered under his roof. He stepped onto the porch through the back door, circling around in the blinding snow. He saw the silhouette, 150 pounds of muscle and hunger, its claws digging into his front door. Silas fired a shot into the air. The thunderous crack echoed through the canyon. The mountain lion spun around, hissed at him with eyes like twin moons, and finally melted back into the darkness of the pines. Silas hurried back inside, his hands shaking from the adrenaline. They were safe, but only for the moment. The bobcat mother looked at him, then lowered her head to her cub. The predator was gone, But the real battle was just beginning. But as the silence returned, Silas realized that the mother's trust came with a heavy price. The cub had stopped moving. The cabin felt smaller now, filled with the heavy breathing of the injured mother cat. Silas knelt on the floor, keeping a respectful distance. He saw the mother licking her cub, her tongue rough and persistent, but the cub wasn't responding. "Let me see him, girl," Silas said softly. He moved closer, inch by inch. The mother bobcat let out a warning purr, a low rumble that meant, "Be careful." She didn't bite. She didn't strike. She watched as Silas reached out with his rough, calloused hands and picked up the tiny creature. The cub felt like a stone carved from ice. It was no bigger than a grapefruit, its eyes sealed shut. Silas checked for a heartbeat. Nothing. He checked for breath. Silence. "Not on my watch," Silas muttered. The old army medic in him took over. He remembered the long nights in the field, the lives he had fought to pull back from the edge. He used his thumb to gently, ever so gently, press on the cub's tiny chest. 1, 2, 3. Then he took a deep breath, cupped his hands over the cub's nose and mouth, and blew a tiny puff of air. The mother bobcat stood up, her eyes wide. She paced in a small circle, her tail twitching. Silas didn't stop. He rubbed the cub's body with a warm wool blanket, trying to get the blood flowing to its tiny heart. "Come on, little soldier. Fight," he whispered. He thought about his own life, the years of solitude, the family he had lost touch with. He felt a sudden, overwhelming need for this tiny spark of life to stay lit. Suddenly, a miracle. The cub's body gave a violent shiver. It let out a tiny, high-pitched sneeze, then a weak, raspy cry. The mother bobcat let out a sound Silas could only describe as a sob. She nudged Silas's hand with her nose, her whiskers brushing his skin. He placed the cub back against her warm belly. Silas sat back on his heels, sweat dripping down his face despite the cold. He had saved the baby. He spent the next hour preparing a mixture of warm water and a little honey, using an old medicine dropper to feed the mother and the cub. For the first time in years, the cabin didn't feel lonely. It felt like a sanctuary. He thought the worst was over, but the morning light would reveal a secret that changed the entire mission. As the sun began to bleed over the mountains, the blizzard died down, leaving a world buried in white. Silas was exhausted, but he couldn't sleep. He had bandaged the mother's paw, a jagged wound clearly caused by a steel jaw trap. Anger simmered in his chest. Those traps were illegal in this part of the woods. Around 8 in the morning, the sound of a heavy engine broke the silence. A rusted-out black pickup truck was churning through the snow up his long driveway. Silas knew that truck. It belonged to the Miller brothers, local poachers who had no respect for the land or the law. Silas stepped out onto the porch, his rifle cradled in his arms. He stood tall, his old military posture returning. The truck screeched to a halt, and 2 men jumped out. They were dressed in dirty camo, carrying rifles and a coil of heavy wire. "Morning, Silas," the older Miller brother shouted, his voice gravelly. "We're trailing a cat, a big female. She's got our trap on her leg. We saw the tracks leading right here." Silas didn't blink. "You're trespassing on private property, Jed, and you're using illegal traps on my mountain. That cat's worth $2,000 in pelt and parts," Jed sneered, taking a step toward the porch. "Give her up, and we won't have no trouble." Silas felt a cold fury he hadn't felt since his days in the service. "There is no cat here for you. There's only a man who's tired of your trash. If you take one more step, you'll find out exactly what an old paratrooper can still do." The tension was a physical weight. The 2 brothers looked at Silas, then at the rifle. They saw the look in his eyes, the look of a man who had nothing to lose and everything to protect. They knew Silas wasn't bluffing. "This ain't over, old man," the younger one spat. They climbed back into their truck, tires spinning, and roared away. Silas watched them go, but he knew they wouldn't stop. They were greedy, and greedy men are dangerous. He went back inside and checked on his guests. The mother bobcat was staring out the window, her body tense. She wasn't looking at the truck. She was looking back toward the ridge where she had come from. She let out a low, mournful howl. Silas realized then that something was missing. The mother hadn't just come to him to save herself. She was mourning something she left behind. Silas looked at the mother bobcat. She was agitated, pawing at the door despite her injury. She would look at her cub, then back at the mountain. "There's another one, isn't there?" Silas asked. He knew how bobcats worked. They usually had 2 or 3 cubs. She had brought him the one she could carry. She had left the other one behind to save this one. He couldn't leave it out there. Even if the odds were 0, he had to try. He packed his gear, a pry bar, a warm scarf, and his pistol. He told Buster to stay and guard the cabin. He looked at the mother bobcat. "I'll find him, girl. I promise." He followed her back trail into the deep woods. The snow was waist-deep in places. Every step was a struggle. After a mile of trekking, he reached a rocky outcrop. That's where he saw the trap line. 6 heavy steel traps hidden under the snow. And in the center of the clearing, he saw a flash of spotted fur. It was the second cub. It was caught in a trap by its hind leg. It was huddled against a frozen log, its fur covered in frost. It was too weak to even hiss. Silas rushed forward, but as he reached for the trap, a low growl stopped him in his tracks. The mountain lion. It was perched on a granite shelf just 20 feet above him. It had been waiting. It was using the trapped cub as bait. Silas was out in the open, knee-deep in snow. He reached for his pistol, but his fingers were numb with cold. The mountain lion coiled its hind legs, its tail twitching with lethal intent. It screamed, a sound that ripped through the valley. Just as the predator leaped, a blur of fur and fury launched itself from the brush behind Silas. It was the mother bobcat. She had dragged her bandaged limb through the snow to follow him. She intercepted the mountain lion in midair. It was a chaotic explosion of claws and teeth. The mother bobcat was half the size of the lion, but she was fighting with the strength of 10. She wasn't fighting for food. She was fighting for her blood. The mountain lion, stunned by the sheer violence of the attack, tumbled into the snow. The mother bobcat didn't back down. She stood over Silas and her trapped cub, her back arched, her face a mask of primal rage. The mountain lion looked at the man with the gun and the mother who wouldn't die. It realized this wasn't an easy kill. With a final hiss, it turned and vanished into the thicket. Silas didn't waste a second. He used the pry bar to snap the trap open. He scooped up the freezing cub and wrapped it in his scarf. The mother bobcat collapsed, her bandages soaked in fresh blood. "I've got you both," Silas sobbed. "I've got you." He carried them both back through the snow, his heart ready to burst. He had his family back. The long road back. The next 2 weeks were a blur of recovery. Silas contacted a friend, a retired veterinarian who kept his mouth shut about the wild guess. They worked together to save the second cub's leg. The cabin became a strange, beautiful home. The 2 cubs, once they were strong enough, began to explore. They would chase each other around Silas's boots and sleep in a heap by the fire. The mother bobcat, though still wild at heart, allowed Silas to sit near her. She would even place her head on his knee while he read his morning paper. The Miller brothers were arrested a week later. Silas had documented the trap line and the injuries, and the game wardens were more than happy to haul them away. But Silas knew that the mountains were calling. On a warm afternoon in late April, when the first wildflowers were peeking through the mud, Silas knew it was time. He opened the front door wide. The air was sweet with the scent of pine and melting ice. The mother bobcat stood at the threshold. She looked at the forest, then back at Silas. She walked up to him and did something he would remember for the rest of his life. She gently licked his hand, a rough sandpaper touch that felt like a medal of honor. The 2 cubs skipped past her, stopping to sniff Silas's pants one last time before heading into the brush. Silas watched them until they were nothing but shadows in the green. "Goodbye, soldiers," he whispered. 6 months passed. Silas was sitting on his porch, watching the sunset. He looked up at the high ridge. There, sitting on a flat rock, were 3 bobcats, one large, 2 nearly grown. They sat there for a long moment, watching the cabin. Silas raised his hand in a silent salute. The mother bobcat stood up, let out a short bark, and they vanished into the trees. Silas went back inside his cabin. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a story. He had a purpose. And he knew that no matter how cold the winter, there was always a way to find warmth. Thank you so much for watching Silas's incredible journey. If this story reminded you that there's still good in the world, please give us a like and share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. What would you have done if you heard that scratching at your door? Let us know in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you want to see more amazing stories of the bond between humans and animals, click the video on your screen right now. We'll see you in the next one.